Welcome to XYPN Radio, where your host Alan Moore brings you into a community of fee-only financial planners who want to profitably and successfully serve Gen X and Gen Y clients. If you're ready to get the knowledge you need from leaders in your field, learn from forward-thinking advisors, and take action on your own goals, XYPN Radio is the show for you. Here's your host.
Hello and welcome to this episode of XYPN Radio. I'm your host, Alan Moore, and I'm excited to have XYPN member Deb Meyer, founder of WorthyNest, based in St. Charles, Missouri, on the show today. Deb started her career on the tax side of the business before finding her way into financial planning. She worked for a large family office firm, but decided her passion wasn't in working with uber-rich, wealthy families. She launched WorthyNest 2 years ago with a focus on working with Christian parents, and her tagline of faith, family, finance tells the story. After a trying time about a year ago into running her business, in which her mother got extremely sick, she decided to really focus her firm on this niche and hasn't looked back. She continues to run her tax practice in addition to the RIA and has just brought on a partner with an investment background to help grow the practice. We talked about an amazing trip that she took with her husband and 3 boys, where they spent 3 months in Spain. They homeschooled their kids, she ran her business, and had an amazing time. We talked about how they were able to make this trip happen. So if you've been wanting to do something like that, she provides awesome encouragement for you. You can find any of the additional resources that we mentioned during the episode at xyplannynetwork.com/168. Also, be sure to go to xyplannynetwork.com/VIP to join our private group just for XYPN Radio listeners. It's a community of advisors we've all been looking for that's there to provide support when we need it the most. Best of all, it's free. I encourage you to check it out. Again, that's xyplannynetwork.com/VIP. Without further ado, here's my interview with Deb. Hey, Deb, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for being on.
Thanks for having me, Alan.
So to sort of kick things off, can you give me an overview of you and your practice, sort of where you're located, number of clients, if you have sort of a typical client, and then we'll dig into the details.
Sure. I'm actually in a suburb of St. Louis, Missouri, so right in the middle of America. I'm in a suburb called St. Charles. And I really focus on working with clients who are Christian parents. I developed this niche about a year ago, and I worked with about 20 families on an ongoing basis now. So I really don't do a lot of, project-based work. I've focused on developing those long-term relationships, and that's where it stands at this moment. I did just recently bring on another partner, though, in my practice. He's another investment advisor rep, and he's experienced in the field. So he has 5 clients that he brought over from his prior firm, and those are now integrated to make it about 25 clients in our firm in total. And yeah, I'm so excited to share a little bit more about that niche focus of, faith, family, and finance. That's the motto of the firm. And I think, the evolution of how I got there and why I decided to pursue that particular group, I think is an important story too.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited to hear more about that. So just quickly, can you talk to me about sort of your path, how you got to starting your own firm? Has this always been your career, or did you transition into financial planning later on?
Yeah, so I guess when you think back to college and kind of what I was deciding to do from a career standpoint, I had looked at a couple of things in the business school. I knew I wanted to go in the business realm, but didn't know exactly which path to pursue. I actually looked at international business for a while and was an international business major for a short time. And then I got some advice from another mentor there at the school who said, international business is great. You love to interact with other cultures, but it might be helpful to find something where you can get an entry-level job, because it's hard to find those kind of international opportunities just as someone fresh coming out of college. So I thought about it some more and decided to go into accounting. I got my CPA license pretty quick after college and worked in Big Four public accounting for about 2.5 years. And then I found financial planning kind of by accident, but really it was another manager at that accounting firm that introduced me to the wealth management industry. And she was just an integral role in helping me kind of say, oh, this might be something more interesting where I can use my tax background, but really help clients more on a proactive basis reach their goals rather than just looking at it, in a historical tax return perspective. So anyway, I went on to that other position about 2.5 years after graduating college and decided I really loved the financial planning aspect of things, going from that comprehensive financial plan perspective, not just focused on investments, but really looking at that holistic picture. So I was fortunate to get in at a firm. It was called Financial Management Partners at the time, and they only had about 10 employees when I started, and we had under $1 billion of assets under management. And then by the time I left, about 7 years later, it was now a multifamily office, and they had grown the assets to over $2.5 billion in that short time span. And I was one of like 25 employees when I left. So it was a really big growth period for us, and it was a lot of learning just on the go. And I really got to see a lot of different kinds of clients as the firm migrated from being a traditional fee-only RIA to a true family office. They really were attracting very different kinds of clientele towards the end of my tenure there when I decided to leave in 2013. So I left that position more so to, pursue some things with my family. I wanted to be a little bit more present to my kids and didn't feel the timing was right to continue working. It was a commute. It was a couple of different factors that weighed into my decision, but I decided to leave, like I said, in 2013. So it was about 7 years I was at that family office. Really stumbled around a little bit. I was looking at some other opportunities closer to my house, just at other firms that I didn't really feel like I fit in long-term in the picture there. So I also was drawing on my accounting background. I had started a business on the side. It's now called SVCPA Services. And I basically built that business up as I was working part-time at some other investment advisory firms, and then decided I'm not really cut out to work for someone else anymore. I just want to go pursue this alone. So that's how it all, I know it's a long story, but that's what brought me to it in 2016.
No, that's great.
I decided to branch out on my own, finally had the confidence to build what I wanted to build.
So it was funny whenever you mentioned, 2.5 years in the Big Four CPA firm. I've yet to meet anyone who looks back on that time period fondly. It's like must do to get into accounting. Like it's just what you have to do. But it is kind of funny how looking back, no one is like, oh yeah, that was so much fun.
Yeah, it was definitely not. Well, and ironically, too, my husband, he's also a CPA by background. So he was at a different Big Four public accounting firm. We were both in tax groups and working crazy, crazy hours. So as we decided to get married, I was like, yeah, I don't think this lifestyle is really cut out for both of us. I want to have a little more free time. It was great experience. But yeah, I was ready to move on into something different.
So you've worked in a few different types of financial planning firms, it sounds like. So, the one RIA that sort of turned into a family office, which I guess let's take a second. How do you define family office? Because we probably have some listeners that aren't familiar with that term.
Yeah, so family office is really serving very affluent clientele. As an example, when I left the firm in 2013, I think the minimum annual fee for any new client families coming into the firm was about $25,000 a year. And they provide deeper services in that, they're touching a lot of different realms with the families. So, right now in my ownership of WorthyNest, I'm meeting directly with parents. So people in their accumulating years, I'm advising them on things they could be doing with their kids, but I'm not necessarily meeting with their kids. If their kids graduate college or get married, I'm not having separate meetings unless they want to be, a new client. So the family office is different in that they will literally say, okay, this is the family that we're serving. We will serve anyone in that immediate family and make sure we're executing on gifting strategies, doing lots of estate planning work, because many of these families have taxable estates. And so really drawing on a lot of that tax background I had and just figuring out how to not make the most money for them, but really continue to transfer that wealth to the next generation and for generations to come.
Yeah, I've never worked in a family office, but my understanding is it's really focused on, again, high net worth. You're working with a few families. Well, there's family offices, there's multi-family office. There are some firms out there that only work with one family because the family, it just has that level of wealth and that level of complexity. Sounds like you were in that multi-family office where you work with a lot of families, but you're going really deep with the whole family and sort of, because, when grandma and grandpa have a lot of wealth, then maybe parents have some of it, or, their kids have some of it, but not all of them. And there's grandkids. Like, it gets pretty complex on where that money's going to end up one day and how they want it to flow and be sure everyone's, where they need to be in preparation for it.
Definitely. Especially with, if they have remarriage situations, just having the estate documents really clear and any, notes, promissory notes between the different family members, making sure everything's tied up there. There's a lot of additional complexity on the estate planning side and just tax mitigation side for these high net worth families.
Yeah. What is it like working in that setting versus, because there are probably some listeners that are thinking or have opportunities at family offices because those firms are growing rapidly versus maybe a smaller RIA. I guess, how would you describe the difference and maybe which one is a better fit for different types of advisors?
Yeah, I think for people who are comfortable seeing large dollar amounts, you really have to kind of start zoning that out because all of the families that you're working with in a multifamily office are going to have, millions of dollars saved. So if you can get past that and just really focus on the planning opportunities that you can bring them and be comfortable doing a lot of the detail-oriented work, as an entry-level position, you're probably not going to be meeting with the client that frequently, but you're going to be handling a lot of the behind the scenes work that's empowering that lead advisor to work with the family. I was fortunate in that, the office that I worked at was changing in scope throughout the years. So I was able, when I first started, within a year, I was actually meeting with clients. And then as I developed those relationships, I was actually becoming the lead advisor on some of the family relationships when I left. So I benefited from the fact that it was small and growing while I was there. I'm sure some of the other more established multifamily offices or ones that don't experience as robust growth, they probably have really clearly defined career paths. And I also think you have to be comfortable with the hurdle of, if you do want to advance in that environment, there will be some necessity for business development if you want to get to that partner level or owner level. And bringing in a client who's willing to pay $25,000 a year is probably much more challenging than bringing someone in who's going to pay you $3,000 a year. So I think if you're up for that challenge and willing to invest in the credentials and know-how to succeed in that environment, I think it's great. I personally felt like I had enough of the academic background to succeed, but my heart wasn't in it as much. And that's part of why I opened the firm WorthyNest to cater more to Christian families that don't have that level of wealth, people that are looking at wealth in a different sense of just monetary wealth. So that would be, if you're an advisor going forward looking out at what these two options are, I would say if you feel more comfortable working with people like yourself, or, if you're 30 or 40 something year old person who's starting a family and you want to work with your peers, that's going to be a very different firm than what you're serving at a family office.
Yeah, and to be fair, we never in our environment, in our world, while we do focus a lot on working with your peers and being able to do financial planning in a different way, I never mean to be degrading about working with wealthy families. They need services too. And honestly, I've seen it as well, where there are a lot of kids and grandkids in these families that have a lot of troubles and struggles with money and their relationship with money. And that work can be really fun and empowering. It may not be for you, and that's okay. Or it may be for you, and that's cool too. So just know that there is a world of family offices out there that do operate a little differently. They can still be fee only. They can still be great planners and all of those things. It's just a little bit different clientele. All right. Well, thank you for that. I appreciate that. Again, I've never worked in a family office, just seen them from the outside. So always interesting to learn about. So you mentioned you have kids. So how many kids do you have, and what are their ages?
Yeah, so I actually have 3 boys. My oldest is 9. I have a 5-year-old who just started kindergarten and a 3-year-old. So they're lots of fun, but they're high energy. So it's nice that I get, my work days where I just kind of relax. And to me, working is relaxing because when I'm with my kids and, getting all the chaos of the day, it's a lot of energy. I grew up with just one sister, so having three boys is a very different experience.
Yeah, it's so true. And I hate I don't like gender generalizations, but I have one boy, now a daughter as well. So she's not old enough to find out the energy levels. But I will tell you, it meets every generalization when it comes to your typical 4-year-old boy. It's like they're just crazy, it's so much fun, but wow, it's exhausting. And you started your business with a 7, a 3, and a 1-year-old approximately. Talk to me about the conversation that you and your husband had around starting a business with 3 kids, those ages.
Yeah. So to paint a little more color, when I left the family office in 2013, I just had the 2 kids, and my husband was actually working full time, but getting his MBA in the evenings. And that was another main reason I left the family office. I was like, I can't keep working the way I'm working. He's doing his MBA, and we have 2 young kids at home. So that was just like utter chaos having 2. And then, by the point I decided to start WorthyNest, I had already, been in SBCPA services for about 2 years. And when I had my 3rd son, I actually did try working for another RIA, which didn't end up being a great cultural fit. And so that was, I was just switching childcare around left and right, trying to figure out what this balance looked like, because the accounting firm wasn't full time, it was part time. And I was like, oh, okay, I can balance these. And I really couldn't. In 2016, ironically, my husband ended up losing his job. And that's when I was like, oh, I really need the income to be more of a full-time income. And I said, do I really want to put all this effort into growing the accounting firm, or would I rather go where my heart's at? And I chose my heart. So I went and started the RIA, knowing that eventually, I could grow these and run these side by side. And that's what I'm doing. So I have both businesses, WorthyNest and SBCPA services, that I'm running in conjunction with each other, with the hope that one day, my time will be more minimal in the accounting firm and I can really just focus 100% of my work time on WorthyNest.
Yeah, I like how you were trying to make it sound like it wasn't quite as bad as it was, and yet you were running 2 full-time businesses with 3 young kids and a spouse that works full-time. So you are busy, to say the least, which is awesome.
Yeah, I mean, we've gone through a lot of transitions with him and his job and trying to figure all of that out. But yeah, it's busy.
So talk to me about, the decision to get started. You said, you were tired of working for other people. Like, was it really the flexibility? I mean, I guess you already had the CPA firm. So was it, what pulled you over into starting the financial planning firm? If you already had the CPA firm, you could have ramped that up and made a good living. What was it about planning that made you want to start the firm?
I think for me, it was just, again, like feeling like I can actually make a difference in people's lives. With accounting, I know I'm helping them with their taxes, or I'm giving them financial reports on the health of their business, but it's not as personally fulfilling, I guess. I want to be a helper. I want to really have a concrete impact on people's lives. And I don't feel like I can do that quite as much in accounting. So for me, just being selfish, I get more pure enjoyment from the financial planning process and meeting with clients more frequently in person, shaking their hand, giving them hugs, praying for them if something's troubling in their personal lives, things like that I really couldn't do on the accounting side. I would just be too limited. And I really wanted to have the 2 different firms because I wanted to have those different target clients that I'm working with. So, in the accounting firm, I'm really focused on working with small business owners. I don't really care what their religious affiliation or value system is. I'll help them on the accounting side. Whereas WorthyNest is more of like my heart and expression of my core values. And that's where I resonate with people the most. So that's why I wanted to focus specifically on these Christian families.
So talk to me about just the setup of the CPA firm. Is it primarily doing tax returns during tax season, or are you doing ongoing tax projection, sort of ongoing work and relationship management with those clients? I guess just specifically on the tax side.
Yeah, I'm actually doing very little tax myself on the accounting firm. I have a tax director who's part-time virtual. She's has over 25 years experience in tax. So she's my tax director. She helps coordinate all of the busy season returns, and I take a final look at them before they go out the door. But she's primarily responsible for those. So on the accounting side, I'm spending a lot of my time on the relationship management and bookkeeping. So I use like QuickBooks Online for a lot of clients and help keep track of their business financials in that system. And I have just a handful of clients, but the clients that I have multiple business entities. So drawing on some of that complexity from the family office, I was accustomed, my first client on the accounting side was a client I had been working with at the multifamily office doing monthly financial reporting for his family limited partnership and S Corp and personally. And I just continued doing that and was getting paid by my prior firm to offer those services because it wasn't something they wanted to be offering in-house. So that was kind of my first start. He introduced me to some other people who had multiple business entities, and that's how it's grown from there. So it's been a neat migration. I've had those clients pretty consistently for the last 4 years, and then I've started adding a few other small business clients that I meet here and there, helping them with being that central point of contact, not only for the bookkeeping and business consulting guidance, but also helping them during tax season and making sure that Jan or part-time tax directors on top of it.
Yeah, I always feel bad for my accountant, just because as a small business owner, it doesn't take long to generate a heck of a lot of complexity, but it's a huge value add whenever you can actually understand the full picture and be able to give advice on that. I mean, I think that's definitely, it's a niche focus for sure, because you can provide so much value. And most of us, unless you're doing that regularly, aren't accustomed to painting a full picture for a small business owner with 4 different entities and, with their kids and their spouse working for them and trying to save for retirement, all of that. I mean, it can be a real mess, but, awesome planning opportunities.
Yeah, I haven't done as much crossover between the two firms in terms of, the clients that have been working with me on SV are rarely WorthyNest clients, but I'm hoping to bridge that gap in the future, especially as I bring on some of these other small business clients that might not have, quite as much complexity as the original clients I had with.
Okay, that makes sense. So you mentioned about halfway into the practice, you sort of shifted into, working with Christian parents. You said faith, family, and finance. So talk to me about, did you start the firm with the intention of working with these clients and just sort of go all in about halfway through, or was this a big shift for you?
Yeah, so I had that motto kind of picked out early on when I first joined XY. I think it was July of 2016. I was building my website, trying to build some of the marketing materials. I already had that in the back of my mind, but I didn't really define what the faith aspect of it meant. I just was kind of, a lot of the early messaging was around just faith in a brighter financial future. Like it didn't really have anything to do with religion or God. And last summer, I actually had a pretty personal experience. My mom got really sick for a couple of months, and it was a really scary time because my mom's like my best role model. She's my best, my husband's my best friend, but I guess second best friend. It was a really hard time. And the only way I kind of got through that period was my faith in God. So I actually had a couple of situations with, relatively new clients that I was like, sorry, I have to cancel this meeting because my mom's in the hospital or whatever. And I had so many clients like that just kind of stepped forward and were like, I'm a believer, I'll be praying for you. And I was like, wow, I can't believe they did that. And it dawned on me in that process that I really wanted to, work with more people like that I could easily say like, oh, I really appreciate the prayers, and vice versa. Like I want to be able to do that for my clients. So I had one of those same clients, his mother had a stroke a few months after my mom's health issues had subsided, and just, being with the family through that and helping them it really didn't have any impact on their finances, but being able to talk through it and just offer a helping hand, I think was so important. So I really did make a shift after she was better to say, like, I want to work with Christian parents, and I want to help them on not just saving for their own retirement, but really looking at the gamut of issues that come along with college planning and if you have young kids. But I'm even finding a lot of, pre-retirees reaching out that are believers. And it's been a really neat progression over the last year just to see where some of the clients are coming from and how they do resonate so deeply with that message.
So what in your mind, or I guess in your service model, what do you feel is different about your service when you're working with a Christian family versus what another advisor who doesn't put faith in the middle, or in their tagline and really focus on that? What's different? I guess, is it just a saying on the wall, or does it actually change? Do you feel like your service model and the way you communicate with clients, is that different based on that?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is just, again, that openness and communication. So I have a lot of clients that will sign blessings on their email or God bless. And it just like makes my day when I see that. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to reciprocate and do the same. That's something I could have never done at a traditional, I would never think of doing that at the family office because I probably would have gotten fired. Like, also, just like from the moment they even think about working with me, I think something deeply resonates in them that they're like, oh, this is the type of person I want to work with. Like it does, they have 1,000 different financial advisors they could probably choose to work with, but they choose to work with me because they feel that connection. And the value system that we share is really important just in opening those initial dialogues and that kind of getting to know you phase. So a lot of people, I'll start off asking about something good in their lives, and many of them talk about God and in that response and the blessings that he's brought on them or their families. In terms of the planning process itself, I do make it intentional to talk about charitable giving in the budget and cash flow discussions. I think that's a little unique amongst advisors. I think some other advisors might touch on it, but like I know many of my clients are going to be tithing 10% of their income, and that's just a standard. So that's not something I'm going to push back on them if they're having cash flow troubles. I'm not going to be like, oh, you better bring that down to 8 or 5 or whatever. So that's another piece to it. And then I would say the other aspect that I'm really working on going forward, I'm trying to figure out if there's a way I can align some of the investments with the Christian values. So far in the research that I've done, I haven't seen any compelling ones where they're actually close in performance to some of the other passive ETFs that I'm using. But I think, as I get more track record and as I see how these funds are performing relative to the fees that my clients have to pay for them, I'll continue to keep that on my radar to see if that's something I can incorporate maybe in 2019 or 2020.
Yeah, I know a lot of times when we talk about niche, we immediately think in terms of profession, doctor, lawyer. But I do think, faith is a fantastic niche market. And because the conversations that you can have with when you are both of the same faith are really important and really impactful for that client particularly, and also makes it more fun for you and the work that you're doing. That, whatever your faith, that being able to work with clients that are of the same faith, even if it doesn't necessarily change the planning process, I think is powerful, because for a client that is, or for an advisor that is not Christian, some of those conversations would be downright awkward or just uncomfortable. And really, we tend to move on from uncomfortable conversations, and we don't really, we wouldn't be able to go there, which I guess the flip side to that is, do you feel like you're excluding on the base of religion? Is that, how do you reconcile, we always say, like, don't talk about sex, money, or politics, right? Or religion, I guess. So these are hot topics. Like, I guess I should ask, do you ever get pushback for the fact that you're really putting faith front and center? And if so, how do you talk through that with that naysayer, if you will?
To be perfectly honest, I haven't gotten pushback because I think the people that do end up reaching out to me already share that element. So if anyone disagrees with it, they're not necessarily, contacting me. They're just moving on to the advisor that they're looking for. I will never exclude someone who's, I have plenty of people I know who are atheist or agnostic, and I'm not going to be like, no, I'll never work with you. It's just more of I find it so much easier to work with clients who share that same value system. And I feel like they're benefiting from the relationship just as much as I feel I'm benefiting from it. It's this really beautiful symbiosis. Yeah, I don't know that I would ever turn someone away if they don't share the same value system, but I just, I'm not like actively trying to pursue everyone of every faith denomination, I guess. I wanted to, when I thought about niching down and focusing on a specialty, I did look at, maybe saying, okay, maybe just business owners, because I'm already serving a lot of business owners in the accounting firm. But I ultimately decided to go in a different direction because I really wanted to focus on this value system and build a niche around that rather than a profession.
Yeah. And I should say, like, I think it's great. I'm totally fine. I think it's a great niche. And again, it's a great way to be able to connect with clients that you get along with. It's also a great example of putting your niche and really putting it out there to the world, putting it on your website. Because as we say a lot, great marketing should repel more people than it attracts. Even just being, when I started my firm and I was 25 years old, I put my face and videos all over the website because I never wanted someone to show up and be like, oh, you're not 40? Like, what is this? I just wanted people to know, so if they wanted to opt out, they could just opt out and not waste my time. And the same with you, that's a great way to say, hey, here's who I am. These are the types of clients I work with. And if you hate that, okay, there's 285,000 other financial advisors that would love to work with you. So, there it is. So I think it's great.
Yeah. And I would say the quality of the client, leads or prospects that I've been working with since I've made that choice, it's probably slowed down a little, but I do feel like the quality has increased so much because we do share that value system, and people are actually excited about working with me because of it, rather than just like, oh, I'm on the fence. Like, I don't know. It gives them a really good reason.
So you said, you're 2 years in, you have 20 clients now that you had brought, or that on the financial planning side that you had sort of built up. So where have you seen sort of the flow of clients coming from? I mean, how have you had success building your practice at this point?
Yeah, I started the firm with 0 clients. So I really had no one, from any prior firms I had worked at that I knew was going to be following me. And I haven't actually added any of those. So like anyone that I had a great relationship with at the family office, they've stayed at the family office, and that is great for them. I've just put myself out there in a lot of different areas from a marketing perspective. Right away, I started a blog. So, I had my website up and running. I think it was October or something. I started posting blog posts and then didn't actually get my approval I got the approval right at the XY conference that year.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah. It was a pretty fun celebratory moment when I got the call from the state regulator saying, yeah, you've been approved. Anyway, so when I started blogging, I don't know who took notice at XY, but this was at the time Stephen Allred was heading out of having his own RIA, and he was joining the XY staff. So they had a spot at Kiplinger Personal Finance to start blogging over there. And I became a contributor to Kiplinger pretty early on in my firm growth. And then I also got some kind of email from Investopedia. So I started becoming a contributor on Investopedia. Those were my main channels of marketing. I guess I'm more of an introvert, so I don't love going to a lot of, in-person events and trying to drum up business, so to speak. That was actually one of the big things holding me back before I started the firm, just trying to decide, do I have the chops to actually make my own clientele? Because I really had no business development responsibilities at my prior firms. So anyway, I started writing and finding a lot of people just seeking me out through the writing, through Google searches. XY Planning Network, I'm on your Find an Advisor portal. I'm on NAPFA's Find an Advisor portal, Fee Only Network. So just putting my name out there in a lot of different places. And I don't have one specific lead source that's like, this is hands down the one that's brought me all the clients. It's really been, one here, one there. And, some might be more beneficial in a given year, and others are like, hey, I do find it's less about what areas you're putting the emphasis on and more just the time of year in terms of prospect activity. So I had a lot of prospects early in the year, like January to March for the last 2 years have always been crazy busy for me. And lots of people reaching out because of various things I'm writing or portals that they're searching and for, find an advisor. So it's been great just getting active on social media, getting active on any of the major websites that people are trying to read, financial news or just better their financial know-how. And that's how I continue to work that. I am trying to, see if I can develop some of the existing client relationships and make some of those more referral based, but I haven't really found the magic secret sauce to that. So right now it's really just been a lot of people finding me online.
Yeah, I remember when I started my firm, people said, if you ever ask an advisor, oh, what's your best source of new clients? They always said, existing client referrals. And I was like, but what if you don't have clients yet? Or I haven't had clients long enough to get referrals. So, your method is, we like to call the shotgun effect of really putting a lot of things out there, but it's having success in a lot of different areas, which is great. And you can start to see what's working, what's not. Obviously, being on XYPN's website or NAFA's website, lower time commitment, obviously, than writing for Kiplinger or Investopedia, that sort of thing. But if you're seeing success there, can weigh sort of the pros and cons of the time commitment. So yeah, I would argue that, the fact that you have a clearly defined niche and you're really putting that out there, it does make content marketing, that sort of thing, a little, I won't say easier, but maybe a little more effective, just because it really does tell people who you specialize in working with and, maybe who, you're not a good fit for.
Right. And I will say a lot of the, materials I put out on Kiplinger or Investopedia, they are more generic, I guess, in terms of, just trying to appeal to a lot of people who are looking for guidance on certain financial planning topics. But anything that goes on my blog, it's very heartfelt. And that was something I could have offloaded to someone else, but I'm like, I didn't even know I loved to write until I started doing it. And I'm like, oh, I'm actually kind of addicted to this. So that's like my fun. Every other week I sit down and write a new blog post, and it's just been a really interesting thing. It's actually evolved into, I want to write a book. So I'm working on that right now, taking some of the rewritten and synthesizing those and adding new content, that kind of thing.
Tell me more about writing the book. How did you get, excited about such a big project?
Yeah, I think it was last year. When I first started writing blog posts, it just clicked with me and connected. And I was like, this is something I need to keep doing. And then I started seeking out more like real writing coaches, I guess you could say. So this writer I like, his name's Jeff Goins. He's written a couple New York Times bestsellers. One I think is more, the one that I really loved was called The Art of Work. I went to his conference last year and ended up there were like a couple of free giveaways or whatever. And I ended up winning some one-on-one coaching with him. So he actually helped with the book outline earlier this year and helped really get me focused in on what each chapter would look like, have one paragraph summaries around each, and really define what message I wanted it to be. So it's not just another marketing tool. It's like, this is actually a real book that I'm going to try to promote, and see where it goes. So I think it was just attending that conference, seeing the energy of other people who were excited about writing books. I don't think there was like anyone else in financial services at that conference. So
interesting.
It was just exciting to see like people in other industries, and he attracts a lot of Christian writers. So that was just nice to get their sense of things. And he even has like an online course that I'm taking as well that's actually helping me through the book writing process, because just writing the first draft is one small part, and then there's a lot of drafts after that you have to go through. I'm still working on the first draft, but I'm hoping to have it done within about a month. So
yeah, I've seen his name in the FinCon community. I've never worked with him. I've seen him speak and have at least heard of him, but I haven't met anybody that's worked with him. So that's really cool to know that he has that service.
Yeah, and I've been doing some FinCon virtually in the past. I'm actually going to the conference this year too. So I think it'll be really good just to be around other people who are dedicating themselves to writing in the financial space and getting ideas on, editors and book illustrators and things like that.
So talk to me a little bit about the partner that you've brought on. So that's obviously a huge decision. So how did you meet and sort of, I guess, what was the dating period like for deciding to be able to, merge up or bring on a partner and bring his clients over and push forward?
Yeah, so he was actually a coworker of another XY member, Andrew Mormon, who's also in St. Louis. Andrew and I got to know each other just through some mutual acquaintances probably 5 years ago. And when I was contemplating starting WorthyNest, but still not 100% sure, I actually met with Andrew and Marty, who's my new partner. And we were talking about maybe it would be a good idea for us to all join forces and have one firm. And I ultimately was like, no, I think I just want to try this on my own and see how I do. Ironically, so Marty has 3 young boys, just like I do. And he lives in like the same suburb of St. Louis. So we would actually run into each other at like our kids' baseball games, at the grocery store, just random places that we weren't expecting to meet up. And his wife is from the same small town that my husband grew up in, like just crazy, crazy coincidences. So anyway, we just continued some of the conversations on and off, just of, hey, maybe this might be something down the road that we want to pursue. And Andrew has since, grown his own firm. He has his own model. It's very different from the kind of clients I'm looking to serve. So Marty had actually reached out to me earlier this year and said he had a client that needed a CPA, and he remembered that I'm also a CPA. So we talked a little bit more about helping his client on some accounting work. And then he's like, yeah, I think I want to join your firm. And I'm like, oh, okay. Let's try to figure out how to do that. And he's a really good balance to me. Like I have a lot of the comprehensive financial planning background. He has a really strong bench in investment management. So he worked at Buckingham Asset Management, which is another really large firm here in St. Louis. He worked with them for several years and even wrote like the forward to one of Larry Swedrow's books. I mean, just really great stuff. And I just said, I think I can figure out a way to make this work. We just have to be really intentional about how we're structuring it and what that's going to look like. So this client that I was helping him on the accounting side, she's actually relocated and she's starting some new business ventures. She's having Marty help her on some of the business planning side of things. So he's probably spending 20 hours a week for her just on business consulting issues. And he still wanted to, have flexibility, and being an independent IAR of another firm really resonated with the firm's message and the clients that I'm trying to serve, and said, okay, let's make this happen. So we just made the transition final in early July. And so far, so good. We're about a little over a month and a half into it. And he has since actually moved back to his wife's hometown, which is about 45 minutes away from me. But we meet on Zoom or phone calls, I would say about every other week. And he's also been really integral in helping me, just make some broader decisions as an owner level decisions that I love having a second opinion on things, because I don't want to make unilateral, like, hey, this is exactly the right way to do it. I really like to get input from others. And that's what part of that entrepreneurship journey. It's been a little bit lonely. I don't need a coworker like every day that I see, but I just want someone to run some of the other ideas by.
So how did you split, I guess, equity ownership and compensation? Like how is he, becoming an equity owner in your RIA, or just compensation based on the clients he works with? I guess, how did you structure that?
Yeah. So initially we're actually doing it more just a compensation split based on his clients. So keep 75% of the revenue of the clients he brought over, and I'll keep 25% of that revenue just because of the setup and the ADV, things like that. But going forward, another big thing for us, if we do decide to have a true partnership where there's an equity ownership component, I think, the idea is he's always a good backup for me and vice versa. And that's something that, we've both been kind of doing this on our own for a little while. And we're realizing like, that's an important piece to have. I don't necessarily need someone who's, going to be able to do a lot of admin work. I just want someone that I know my clients can trust if a bad situation arises. And we'll kind of figure out the equity piece down the road. But for now, we're just, kind of testing the water, so to speak. It's working out well, though.
Yeah, it's an area where a lot of firms are thinking about partnering or merging, and there's just so many ways to structure it. So it really is about finding what works for you and for the partner that you're bringing in.
I think one thing that's actually benefited us in this transition too, Marty had investment management clients at TD Ameritrade. That's who I use as the custodian. So it was actually a really seamless transition. And he's already been just acting as his own IAR under other firms prior to this as an independent IAR. So he's already, navigated these kind of relationships before, and he's familiar with what paperwork we actually need to file to make it happen. So that's been a really great addition. It hasn't been, I think, as difficult as it would need to be, but I definitely relied on some of the compliance resources that I saw in XY's forum as we were making this transition too, just to make sure I hadn't overlooked some aspect of it. So
awesome. So one of the things that I heard through the grapevine was that you spent, was it 3 months in Spain recently? Can you tell me about that trip?
Sure. Yeah. So a big thing for me has just always been to build a virtual firm. It doesn't matter where I'm physically located. I will be able to serve my clients regardless of location. And, prior to taking that adventure, I was already serving, a handful of clients out of state. So we were meeting on Zoom video conference. And my husband, initially was resistant to this idea, but over time it kind of grew on him. I started talking to him about it in early 2017, and he had, started a new position in August of the prior year. He was not loving the position. It was a lot of just not a great fit. And I could see how our family life it wasn't crumbling, but it wasn't great. Like it was just, there was a lot going on where I was like, is this really it? Like, is this what the day-to-day looks like? And we also lost, like, a couple of his family members passed away. And it was just one of those inflection moments of like, maybe we should just start living the lives we really want to live and try something adventurous for a little while. So I remember my oldest son is at a private, Catholic grade school. And I remember talking to the principal when we had to turn in the commitments for the following year. I'm like, would it be possible for me to take him out of school for a few months and then just rejoin him back in? And she talked about it with our pastor, and she's like, yes, I can make this happen for you. And I was like, awesome. I'm not saying we're doing it, but it's just good to know that that's an option. And at this point, my other younger ones weren't even technically in real school yet. They were preschool or just daycare. So as soon as I kind of got the big picture, is this something we can actually make happen? That was kind of cleared out of the way. And I knew it was something I wanted to do. I had fallen in love with Spain several years ago. I was in a study abroad program in college and just loved it so much. The culture, the dancing, the food, everything. So I knew I wanted to return. It was really about convincing my husband to actually make this leap. And he did. We didn't know for sure that we were going literally until December, and we left in January. So
that's awesome.
To quit his job, and that's when we were like, yes, this is actually happening. We had booked the tickets to Barcelona much earlier in 2017, but we didn't book the return tickets until December, or any of the accommodations until December. So it was really cool to be able to do it. It was also kind of challenging, 3 young boys in we got, 2 or 3 bedroom apartments, or actually all of them were 3 bedroom apartments just on Airbnb. And we went around to like 4 different cities, the 4 major cities of Spain. So Barcelona, Madrid, Valencia, and Seville. Took public transit, just completely changed what our normal everyday looked like. And it was really, I'm so glad we did it, but I probably wouldn't do it again for a long time just because of the work involved. It was a lot of work.
Yeah, it sounds so easy, right? Just like, let's go overseas for 3 months. So how did you, I guess, operate the business? Did you take 3 months off from the business, or did you keep working full time? How did y'all balance that?
Yeah, so in order to make this happen, my husband had to quit his job and become a full-time stay-at-home dad while we were there. And I was going to continue working just from an income standpoint. I'm the careful financial planner, so I'm always looking at, okay, is this something I could afford to just leave completely? And of course, we were doing it in the middle of winter because I didn't want to be here for winter. And winter is often tax season. So even though I don't do a lot of tax prep, I'm still communicating a lot with prospective clients or current clients on their taxes, and definitely needed to keep things going. So while we were over there, I continued to grow WorthyNest. I ended up adding like 5 new clients while we were over there. It actually flowed really pretty well. We, the time zone change is pretty significant. So I'm on Central Time. It was about 7 hours ahead in Spain. So, I would often take the mornings where I just sleep in with the rest of the family, and then we might go and do one quick thing as a family. And then I'd usually start my day around 1 or 2 in the afternoon so I could have some overlap with client time. And I tried to arrange all the meetings so, from my client's schedule, all meetings would be over before noon if they wanted to have them. Others just opted to wait until I was back and see me then. So it really just depended. But there were a lot of people, I was talking to prospective clients, not even telling them where I was at. And then once they became clients, I'm like, okay, so by the way, we're going to be doing these first few meetings virtually because I'm overseas. And they were all really excited and happy for us. So it worked out really well.
So how did you handle the kids' schooling and that sort of thing?
Yeah, so schooling was interesting. Like I said, my oldest he was in 3rd grade at the time. He was pulled out of school for a couple of months. My husband agreed to homeschool, and, he did a pretty admirable job. I wouldn't say he's like going to get, the rock star homeschooling award or anything, but he, put some emphasis on it. And a lot of it for us was just exploring the real world. Like our son was able to master a metro system, and those are kinds of things they wouldn't learn in school normally. So just taking opportunities as we saw them when we were out and about, that's what we really, I guess we kind of were world schooling them during that time. My, younger ones, my middle son, he just started kindergarten. So technically preschool wasn't that big of a deal to miss. And my absolute youngest one, he picked up like 2 Spanish words. So we were pretty excited about that. But yeah, it for our ages, and that was another reason we did it at the time. We did it like I wanted to make sure we weren't pulling 2 of them out of school, traditional school, because that's what we were so accustomed to doing. I just wanted to have the one. And my oldest was already pretty far ahead academically that even though he didn't learn as much of the book stuff while we were there, he was able to pick it up quickly again when he returned.
Yeah, listeners probably know by now I was homeschooled my whole life. And we used to do trips like that, spend 6 weeks going up and down the East Coast, and really took the focus off math and science for those 6 weeks and just focused on history. And it was great. It was a really cool learning experience, and appreciate you sharing that to be sure that parents know, it takes a little bit more elbow grease in figuring things out, and a supportive spouse, so you can keep running the business. But you can still do those things. And that's why we started our businesses, right? Like, this is why when I ask people, why are you an entrepreneur? Flexibility of time is usually number one. So let's, take advantage of it, and take a 3-month trip to Spain, even though it's extremely complicated and hard to do, because, it's one of those things that you and your kids will value those memories for a lifetime. And, why not?
Yeah, I'm obviously in agreement with you.
So as we're sort of coming to a close, I'll ask that, you're 2 years into the business now. You run 2 businesses, 3 young kids. If I could put any more stressors on you on the list, you've really had a lot on your plate and really have kept your head up and kept moving forward. So what are some of the things when you look back over the last, 24 months for listeners that are thinking about starting a business or in the middle of that, sort of that first year or two grind? What advice do you have for them? What are some of the things you've learned that you want to share?
Yeah, I think number one, if this is something that you're dreaming about, have the confidence in yourself that you're going to make it happen. I know it's not an easy road whatsoever, but you have to keep that kind of long-term prize in mind. For me, it was really overcoming that fear of business development because I knew starting with 0 clients, like I was going to have to be developing a lot of business to grow my firm. But I think for me personally, having that other steady source of revenue was really reassuring, from my accounting firm. That wasn't covering all of my family's living expenses if my husband wasn't working, but it was at least providing a really solid foundation that I don't think a lot of other people, who are starting a business from scratch necessarily have. So I really benefited from having that as another, a lot of people call it side hustle, but in my case, it's like a side hustle plus or plus one or whatever. I don't know what you consider it, but it definitely gave me more peace of mind and confidence around growing WorthyNest, and just now finding out what that balance looks like, at which point I can, really transition SD CPA over to someone else. I think that's, on the horizon for me, just as a business owner trying to look 2 or 3 years into the future. The other piece of advice I would say is if you're really, I make it sound easy, like I've always made these decisions and I just go with them. But like I had thought about starting my own firm early. Like I had read some of the early stuff XY was putting out about Sophia Vera and all these other people. And I just sat on it for so long because I was so afraid of failing. And I think if you can just trust your gut, trust your instincts, you have the support you need, make it happen. Don't feel like you have to find the perfect time to do it. Yeah, make it happen.
There is no perfect time, right? It's like the perfect time to have kids.
There's no perfect.
By the time you can afford them, you don't want them because, So yeah, it is interesting how that all works. But awesome, Deb. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show and share your career path and the work you've been doing. And I'm super excited to see, how things progress for you over the next year or two. So thank you so much.
Thanks. It was great being on here, Alan.
Be sure to join our VIP community at xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP to hang out with other XYPN radio listeners, ask questions for future mailbag episodes with myself and Kitsis, and to finally find a community of like-minded financial advisors. Thanks so much for joining me today. We'll see you next time.
You're not alone, and you're not crazy. It's scary starting, building, and growing your own financial planning firm. And that's why we put together a free private community just for you, the Cutting Edge Financial Planner. Go to xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP or text XYPN Radio to 33344 and join a network of thousands ready to change the lives of Gen X and Gen Y clients.